Good morning, everyone. I have 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for hopping on today. If you want to go ahead and put your name in the chat box so you get credit for being on the call, that would be great. I think for most of the state, we have a relatively brief meeting this morning, and then at the end, we'll have the ambassadors hop off, and then I'll do a quick training on pairs for the supervisors, how to pull your impact data from, or we'll start with the other agenda items. So Amalia?
All right, I just have a quick reminder to take the iPad survey. Today is the last day to take it. Please get on there. We're trying to figure out what we can do to best get you guys set up with the equipment you need. So get on there, take it, be honest, let us know what you think and what we can do.
Great, thanks, Amelia. And that link to that survey, I think, was sent out on Friday. Is that?
Yeah, and I can resend it today. I'll send it out again.
Okay, great, thank you. Next on the agenda is Lacey.
Hello, everyone. This was just a reminder that I had requested updates for the sites in your counties in the eligibility folder by today. So please just send those updates to my email, and I included those in the minutes. Most of you have it, but just in case, makes it just a click away. I look forward to seeing those, and shout out to Beaver, who has submitted theirs already.
Great, any questions for Lacey about those eligible sites? No, okay. And Christy?
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind everyone that the documents that you got at conference, if you didn't turn those into Amalia, that they need to be turned in to her or to your supervisor. And if you are a supervisor, if you would please get those uploaded and sent into Marcia and well, to Amalia and CC and Marcia on that, so that we can keep track of who has those documents completed and who we are going to need to hunt down and get them from. So. And then just a quick reminder and to let you know that for those that are new, there are Turkey Talk cards that are on the Ambassador resources that you can use in your classes. They just talk about food safety with turkeys, how to prepare them, how to make sure that you're safe. So those are available to you on the on the Ambassador resource website, or not website, but the staff menu on that page. And that's all. Thanks, Casey.
Great, thanks, Christy. And maybe we'll send the link out with the notes from today for those cards so people can easily access them. They're a great resource for your participants and even for you. I use them every year. So there's a lot of good information on there. Lacey, it looks like Renee missed the part about eligible sites. Would you mind just repeating?
Sure. So everyone who's been fully trained should have access to the eligibility folder in Box. This folder helps you identify locations where you may teach or may recruit or potential partnerships. One of the files in the folder is sites, which would be locations like the food banks or food pantries, low-income housing, and training services or rehabilitation centers, just different locations that likely serves our target population. And the request was a couple of weeks ago to look each county look through their file, see if anything needs to be updated or corrected, and also send me any additions that you have. We compiled this list a few years ago with help with interns and from a list that we had that was made, before I even worked in the office. And so I just know that you all know your counties much better than I do. So your input would be great.
Great, thank you, Lacey. All right, moving on to Marcia.
All righty, so Heidi and the state office has been working with Paul at DWS to better utilize our calendar items for his eligibility staff. So as an example, from what I understand, when somebody calls in, they get an eligibility staff member to talk to. And while they're talking, that eligibility staff member might realize that they need help with grocery shopping or stretching their budget. And so they would like to be able to say, oh, well, in your county, there's a class you might enjoy. So we are trying to put our open calendar items in a document that we can send to Paul, and he can share that with his eligibility staff. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this is the right screen. Okay, so can you see my email over here?
Yeah, we can.
This is an example of what Candy was able to put together for November. As you look at this, we've been able to see that some of them have all the information in there, like food, fun, and reading at the Tree Mountain Library. It's got the address in there, and it's got the time and date. However, if you look throughout these, some of them have really long explanations, some of them have no descriptions, and some of them have places like CCS. And I'm not in Weber County, and I really don't know what CCS is. And so what we're trying to do is to make it more consistent and have a better consistency throughout our calendaring items for the open classes. So for the open classes, what we're asking is, number one, you put open first and foremost, so Candy knows that it's a public class. We're asking that you put the curriculum name and then the target audience that is able to go to that class. We want you to add the full location, name, and the full address so that if somebody isn't in that county, they'll be able to explain where the class is at. The date and time, and then a 1 or 2 line description. So for the audience, you can say it's an adult class, a teen, and you can put the ages that you would like to show up to that class, a youth class, again, those ages, or a family class. And then we're asking that you have them in by the 15th of the prior month. So for December, we actually need your classes in there now so that we can get this ready and sent out to DWS in a timely manner. So here are some examples. Now these are some of these ideas I pulled off of your Google Calendar, but they're not correct. So don't freak out if your class is listed at a different time and date. But open, create better health. It's an adult class. It's at the Utah County Health Department with the full address. It's on November 20th from 11 to noon. And a short description would be learn how to make a variety of salads and how to be active as a family. Another description, open, food, fun, and reading, and it's for youth 0 to 5 years old at the Tree Mountain Library, the address, the date and time, learn about My Plate and active play with your preschooler. Here is a teen class. We're gonna have 11 to 17-year-olds come at the Millard County Extension Office with the full address, the date and time, and we're gonna learn about food safety and hand washing during that class. Or an open class, they're gonna teach the Spanish curriculum and it's gonna be open to families. It's gonna be at the family place in Hiram with the full address, the date and time, and then maybe bring family and learn some family-friendly meals and how to shop on a budget. All right, so do any of you guys have questions for me?
Looks like there might be one in the chat.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. My impression is no abbreviations, right?
Correct.
Because the abbreviations, I just attended a meeting someplace. Everybody was using abbreviations that I had no idea what they were talking about. And so, yeah, government abbreviations become so easy.
Yeah, correct. We want the full name, the full address. You want it to be so that somebody who is not familiar in your county will know what you're talking about. because a lot of times when people call into these eligibility, somebody from, say, Delta might call in and they'll be talking to somebody who is in Washington County. And so they need to have that full information so they understand exactly what it is. Any other questions for me?
Thank you.
And just so you know, this is a working progress. We will be getting feedback from Paul and his staff. And so there may be changes as it goes. We're just trying to do our best to get them the information that they need in a way that is usable and easy to understand. So be patient with this.
Great, thanks, Marcia. All right, okay, looks like my items are next. So my first one, I didn't want to forget, this is the last time we'll meet before Thanksgiving. So we all hope you have a happy and safe and delicious Thanksgiving. It's probably one of my favorite holidays of the year, so enjoy with your families. A couple of other things, it seems like we've gotten away from county sharing in our statewide meetings, so we'll get back to that starting in December. So we'll send out the list the week prior to the counties who we'd like to share. I think it's a really valuable thing that we do, so our ambassadors and supervisors can hear what's going on in other counties. So we'll resume that in December. A couple of other brief reminders, success stories. So the requirement is that each ambassador have at least one success story per month. I went into success stories the other day and there's really not very many, and we are about a month and a half into the fiscal year. So please go ahead and get in there and add your success stories. I'll be doing a training on them in the next little while. So for all of the new ambassadors, exactly what we're looking for in success stories. I didn't want to take a lot of time to do it today. But basically it's reporting some successes that your participants have told you as a result of what they've learned in your classes or from your PSE efforts or anything like that. So just gives a nice voice to the programming. You know, the surveys collect the numbers and the behavior change that are reported, but having those quotes or statements from participants really helps bring the successes of our program to life. So they're really essential. So please remember to collect those and enter them into pairs. Also, I wanted to remind you of a change for this year, that those pre-surveys, whether it's for Create Better Health or Create Family Meals, can be distributed to participants during classes 1 and 2 in a series. Since we've expanded our series to have to include at least 6 classes, it's fine to collect those from new participants in classes 1 and 2. So you certainly wouldn't collect it, 2 surveys from the same participant, but if you teach a series and there's 4 people in the first one, you get pre-surveys from all of them, and then during the second class, maybe you have 2 additional new participants, you could give them the pre-surveys and then give the mid-series surveys to the participants that had already filled them out. So that's a big change from last year, but we're really hoping to increase the full sets of surveys we have. I ran the data last week from last year, and only about 25% of our participants completed both a pre and a post survey, which we were anticipating that number to be pretty low, but we're hoping to increase that this year. So if you have questions about that, just let me know. Let me just check the chat. I saw something pop up. Oh, it's just an entry, okay. You may have seen my SOS email last week about aggregating data entry into pairs. So what that refers to is if you had 3 of the same surveys, previously you were able to select a button that said aggregate data entry, and you'd be able to go in and just populate, like 3 females filled out the surveys, 3 people selected seldom for this response, 2 selected, never, or whatever the case is. That would mess up our data analysis at the end of the year. So we've taken away that option. So you'll just have to enter the survey responses individually. Fortunately, just a couple of ambassadors were using that option, so not a lot of changes needed to be made, but I just wanted to bring that up to you. It will still be part of the pairs training that I recorded last week. until I can re-record that, but the option is no longer in there. So I'm hoping it won't really trip too many people up because they just won't see that option to select. Next thing, okay, I just mentioned I did record the introductory pairs training, which is now available on the YouTube training channel. I went over just an introduction to your dashboard and how to log in and how to enter a program activity or a series of classes. So go ahead and check that out if you are a new ambassador or if you just need a refresher. Please feel free to use that resource, but I'm always happy to do individual trainings if you'd like more interaction. That's completely fine. But I thought having a resource that people can refer back to would be beneficial. And I'll be doing recordings for each of the areas of pairs modules throughout the next month or so and get those up there so you can go and see how to enter indirect and PSE and partnerships and coalitions. They'll all just be individual trainings so you can just log in and see exactly what your question is about. But again, not to ask people to not reach out to me with questions. I'm happy to answer individual ones as well. So that's what I have for the statewide staff. I'm going to move into a training for county supervisors to pull their reach data from pairs. So ambassadors, you're more than welcome to stay on if you're interested to see, you know, what we're pulling at the state and at the county level. But you're also free to log off if you would like. So go ahead and do that. And I'm going to just share my screen.
Just say, Casey, at some point, our office is moving and I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I've got to find out if I should keep it or not.
Okay.
So at some point, you know, when you're finished, don't leave so I can talk to you, please.
Okay, you got
Thanks.
it. All right, so can everyone see my screen? Should see the pairs dashboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
So this is what you will see when you log on, supervisors. And so one of the big limitations of pairs, which I actually think they're changing for this year, is from the county, when you're filtering the data to the county level, you're not able to access impact data. If you try to pull some of your impact data, which is the responses to the surveys and the actual behavior changes and all of the really good information, you just get a bunch of blanks in the Excel export. So it's not something you're able to pull for this past fiscal year, but my plan is to send you that data from your county by December 15th. So I'll go through all of your surveys and pull all of your data together and just give you a snapshot of the behavior changes that occurred in your county as a result of the programming of your ambassadors. It looks like this year, they are fixing that, so hopefully that will be the case. And then, you know, throughout the year, you should even be able to go through and see some of the impact data as you're moving through the year, which will be helpful for different reports or questions that stakeholders have for you. But for this year, I will send that to you. So I'm just going to walk you through what you can pull from pairs. And my understanding for digital measures, you need reach and then impact, which I'll send you. So when you log into pairs, what you're going to look at is the analyze function up on the top. And you can look at your unit snapshot. As of last year, I didn't really share that much with you, so I'd recommend just going right into the ears data. So if you click ears data, you're just going to come to this where it's going to ask you to filter what you're looking for. So you always want to make sure you are choosing the right reporting year. It's always going to default to the current reporting year, so we're going to have to switch that for last year's data. So October 2018 to September 2019. Units, pick your county. I think that's the only one that would probably pop up, so I'm just going to pick cash here. Reported by, if you were interested throughout the year to look at specific ambassadors entries, you could put in reported by and it would just pull up the ones from that ambassador. But if you leave it blank, then it'll pull up your whole team if you have more than one. Method, I'd recommend just leaving this estimate unique reach for item 5. This is a relatively new feature that it pulls unique people reach, so it's unduplicated participants. So you can see the other The other option is duplicated reach, which really isn't an accurate depiction of how many individual people you've met. Sometimes for some of our larger counties, duplicated reach would likely result in a population that is far greater than your county, or for our case, often the state. So just leave that to the default of estimate unique reach for item 5. I would not include incomplete records. We want to just include the complete records. So those are the ones that your ambassadors verified as complete data. And this session start date and session end date, up here, we want to just pull the entire reporting year for the purposes of this report. If you wanted to see what they did over the course of a month, you could enter it here. But if you just leave this blank, it will pull the entire reporting year that you've requested up at the top. And then you'll hit run report. And this is what will pop up. There are some limitations to what you can gather from this, but I'll show you what you can gather and then where you can get the other information you probably would be interested in obtaining. So item 2, this is direct education only. So this is going to be your adult classes, your youth classes. It's not going to include your PSE efforts or your indirect activities. So this is just the people that were reached with education. And they break it up into a couple of different ways. They have age, so your age groups you can see here, and then age is broken up into genders. So you can see how many females were less than 5, how many males were less than 5, and so on. The next 2 columns, actual count and estimated count, they are derived from 2 different ways. When your ambassadors collect surveys from people or they collect actual demographic information from the classrooms that they're teaching in, they will often select a box in pairs that says actual count. So we know that this is exactly how the participants are themselves identifying. Estimated is if they're in a class that's really large, or if they didn't get the demographic information from the teacher and they've just estimated how many people were under 5 or 5 to 17 or females or males, they'll just they'll select a box that says estimated. So the numbers are hopefully as accurate as they can be. They're what your ambassadors reported. So you can pull the total numbers for your reporting. Again, this estimated is just how they've selected what demographics those particular participants fell into, but the total number should be quite accurate, if not spot on. And then your total bottom right is your total if you add up all of the individuals that they reached. The next item has the same individuals broken up into ethnicity and race. So one of the limitations as far as digital measures goes is you can't report like how many, if you want to combine these 2 groups, you can't report how many females were Hispanic or Latino, or how many males were identified as Black or African American. I'm not quite, this is how we have to report SNAP-Ed, so this is why PAIRS is set up this way. You can go into individual surveys if you wanted to find that really specific information. I know Heidi has a way that she estimates it. She's out today. But if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and reach out to her and say, can you just give you some insight how you estimate how many females report as, you know, these ethnicities and races. But these 2 numbers here should add up pretty closely to your total number up in item 2. Are there any questions so far? And then down in this ethnicity and race, it's the same case, the actual versus estimated counts. It's just how your ambassadors reported the ethnicity and the races of their participants. If the participant self-identified, or if they just estimated what ethnicity and race they are. Okay, the next item is item 4, which is direct education. And you may not need all of these pieces or choose to report on all of these, but this is what we're required to report on, so it's why it was built into PAIRS. Programming details. So this is, again, just referring to direct education. So you'll look at the number of single session classes, so one-time classes. Again, we're trying to move away from that, so we'd like these numbers to be relatively low as the years go on. And then you can see the how long the sessions were. We're really looking for a series of classes from, at this point, we're looking for 6 to 8 lessons is our ideal series. So we should see most of our series down here in row 3. But, you know, we know that that takes some time to move in that direction. So these are just the number of series delivered. If you want to see the number of sessions or classes that were delivered in those series, so we had 8 series that had 2 to 4 classes, and within those 8 series, there were 24 classes reported, or 24 lessons. Same here, we had 14 series of 5 to 9 sessions, and then you can see over here, the actual number of sessions or classes taught is 87 or so. And then series of 10 or more sessions. So I'm not sure if you'll use that information, but it's there for you. And it might be good to, you know, check in halfway through the year and say, hey, let's see if we can start declining this number of single sessions. So there are different ways you can use this data throughout the year. Item 5, I think has limited usability at the county level. So these are all based by intervention title. So for fiscal year 2019, the interventions that we had, let's have this written down, that they could select were CREATES, which is now Create Better Health, Create My Plate, Youth Curriculum, Thumbs Up Food Pantries, and Thumbs Up Retail. So item 5 pulls the information based on those, which one of those interventions were selected by your ambassador. And then it totals up all of the different activities. So PSE, indirect education, and direct education, social marketing, if applicable, that they did that would pertain to that specific intervention, which is often a curriculum or a PSE intervention. So the totals that you're going to see in here are, they're very high numbers. They aren't necessarily new people reached in them. So I really would be careful with how you report these numbers if you choose to do so. I'm going to show you some better ways to get your indirect activity numbers and PSE numbers. But you can see here which interventions your ambassadors are using the most. There is you can click up here on the this link for the SNAP-Ed EARS form and see what all of these codes refer to. You know, DE is direct education, PSE is obviously PSE. Data sources are similar to that actual versus estimated. Visual estimate is V. Intervention settings and number of settings, BB may refer to like a food assistance site, and there were one of those. So if you were interested in breaking all of this down, you could go into this SNAP-Ed EARS form and it would give you the codes for all of these different initials throughout this table. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I do think there's limited usability with this one for your purposes. Item 6, this is the last item in the EARS form, is partnerships. So I think this will probably be pretty important. So these are all of the partnerships that your ambassadors reported, broken down by sector, or yourself if you went in and reported some of your partnerships that you work specifically with your SNAP-Ed work on. So you can see here, you'll have a total at the bottom, the total number of partnerships reported. And again, it's broken up per sector. So agricultural organizations, so this one here in cash is the farmers market. Early care and education facilities, so daycare facilities, Head Start programs, faith-based groups, food banks, food pantries. So you can just see the options they had available from pairs and how they reported those. A nice thing about this list is that it includes all of the options. So if you're going through this and you know that there are some, let's see, what would be an example? A public health organization. So if you partner with the health department and you don't see a partnership there, you could go ahead and just add that into your reporting. So you can see what maybe your ambassadors missed in their reporting. The rest of this table, again, you could use this link up here to see what these all refer to. But it just talks about what type of assistance SNAP-Ed gives to the partnership and what type of assistance is received by SNAP-Ed for the partnership. So it'll be things like, you know, if they teach at a DWS one of the codes will be that DWS gives a location and they give participants that we work with, and then SNAP-Ed provides the education. So those are some examples of assistance received and provided that you would find throughout. And then intervention types, you can see what type of intervention, so direct education, social marketing, or PSE, or all of the above that are done with those partners. So here they have the food pantry, or the food stores were a site of PSE work. The Human Services Organization, so likely Department of Workforce Services, received direct education only. You know, when we're looking through this, what we would love to start seeing is sites that are receiving multiple levels of interventions. So that's something that I use this form for. So that's your EARS data. So really what you're looking at is your direct education reach, and your partnerships is the data you're going to get most usefully from this report here. I'm going to go back to the home page. And a couple of other things you may be interested in are your success stories. So you can just go to the analyze function, success stories. This kept the filter that I had in for the last feature. So Cache County, the reporting year is correct. Probably the easiest way to like search these is to export them. Anytime you export anything from pairs, it'll go into an Excel spreadsheet, so it becomes more searchable. Otherwise, you would just have to click through every single one of these to see what the success story was. But this is how they're entered. They will pull one favorite quote from the success story, but then they'll also give some background and then the story narrative. The story narrative generally is the bulk of the success story, and it's probably what you would pull for if you wanted some qualitative data to report for your programming. Okay, so that's success stories. Indirect activities. So these are things that support your direct education and your PSE and your I guess those two areas. Again, what you'll want to do, it also includes social media. You'll want to export your information. I've exported one down here that I'm just going to pull and share. I'm just going to switch my screen share. Did that one share? I don't think I hit the it did. Okay, all right, great. All right, so when you export it, you're gonna get this kind of gnarly, this is what it'll look like. There's 3 different pages or tabs at the bottom. So the code book is just kind of back or insider stuff for how it's all coded and pulled in pairs, so don't worry about that one. The second page has the indirect activity data. So this is going to have who entered it in your county, what they titled it. So there's Facebook pages, there's the farmers market, there's the Hispanic Health Coalition Fair. So if you're looking for something specific, you can search this way. Or if you're just looking for your total indirect activities throughout the year, you can just export the whole thing. It'll have the intervention. So remember that list that I talked about for 2019. They'll have the intervention here. And then where you're going to pull reach and intervention channels is in the next tab down below. So this indirect activity data doesn't have a whole lot of information for you. Channel is like how the channel that they use to disseminate the information. So when you're looking at this next one, column D is the channel that was used. So there's a very large drop-down menu they can select from. So things like community events that they participated in, as compared to ones where maybe they just dropped something off. Social media is counted in here. An intervention channel could be they distributed hard copy materials, so flyers, calendars, recipe cards, things like that. The tricky thing about everything in this entry and in this data poll is every intervention channel can be counted. So if they went to the farmers market and they are reporting a community event and they're reporting that they handed out hard copy materials, Maybe they handed out 2 of them. So within this indirect poll, you may have 3 entries for the same event. And it's really kind of falls on the responsibility of your ambassador to be reporting the numbers properly so that we're not duplicating the number of people we're reporting. So I would probably veer towards reporting like number of indirect activities versus people reached through indirect activities, just because I question the validity of the data that you're able to pull from here. But I'll show you how to pull it, and then you can use your best judgment on how you want to report it. You could also report it with, you know, some limitations stated. But in this intervention channel, if you go over to column S, it's called newly reached. So column R here is your reach. And these are the number of people that they've estimated they reached at that event. So again, it can be social media, it can be a farmer's market, it could be a health fair, it could be a variety of things. Newly reached should be the people that they don't think they've ever reached with any SNAP-Ed programming before. So we definitely understand that's a very hard thing to estimate. But when we're training them on this, what we say is, if you're at a farmer's market and you handed out your 200 recipe cards, you're estimating your reach as 200 people, but you know at least 10 of those people you've seen in your classes before. So when you're reporting newly reached, you're going to report 190. So many limitations to that, but this is the number if you were looking to pull some reach data that you would ideally use, the newly reached. Because you can see here, this county does a really good job at trying to estimate the number of people that are new compared to those that they reach. So a lot of their newly reached numbers are smaller than their reach numbers, if that makes sense. Where it gets tricky is social media, because there's really, Jocelyn, hop in here if you have any insights into this, but there's really no way to know if you've reached new people. Is that?
Right. Our process, contrary to what we're looking at right there, is to just do, what does it say at the top of the column? Not new
This
people.
one is reach and newly reached.
Yep, we just do reach. In fact, for social media, that newly reached should always just be 0. There's no way, unless we were actually tracking people's online address, IP address, there's really no way for us to know. Unless you have new followers. You know, if you have like 10 people say they're new to following your page, then you can definitely put them over there, but we're not tracking that otherwise. Thanks.
Yeah, so you can see, just approach this with care, and be sure that when you're reporting numbers, telling people how you pull them and what those numbers refer to is what is the best that we can do. So maybe for indirect, you'd want to pull your social media reach and then your indirect reach from your booths. That might be a nice way to divvy it up. But you could, if you're confident in these numbers being newly reached, you can go ahead and sum that total for newly reached and see how many people your ambassadors reported as reached through indirect activities in your county. And you can see here this column, which is nice, that it is right next to the reach numbers, the source of data, so you can see how they collected those numbers. And a lot of them are going to be visual estimates. So you take those with that understanding. Commercial market data, yeah, they're all 0 if they collected it for commercial market data. Oh, they have that for social media, but visual estimate is most of them. So indirect activities, you just want to report that data as estimated reach. Any questions on indirect? And there's lots of other information you can gain from here, locations, sites. So really whatever you kind of want to filter. PAIRS gives you a lot more information than you need for digital measures, but if there's things of interest, you can just kind of play with it or reach out to me, and I'd be happy to walk you through what some of the other things mean. Okay, I'm gonna stop this share and then pull up PSE. Let's check the chat. Okay. All right. So the PSE sites, Similar to indirect, you'll just export them based on the fiscal year. And this is what you'll pull up. You can see it has all of these different tabs along the bottom, a lot of which are really specific to what we need to be reporting. So what I would probably do, just because there is an excess of information, is there's a couple of spots to really focus on. I actually pulled this one for the whole state for this current year. So if you go to the second tab for PSE data, this is where you can see the site names. This is just kind of the general information, what type of setting it is. So a lot of ours will be food assistance, food banks, and food pantries. And then the site name, and who entered it, and the location and the intervention that they chose. This year we have a different set of intervention names that's more inclusive of everything that we have. So I think it'll be a little bit more, that year's item 5 that I showed you will be a little bit more functional this coming year, just because they are actually all interventions that should be tied to every type of activity. So just general data here in the PSE data, and then the needs, readiness, and effectiveness. This is when we are always talking about those environmental scans where we get a baseline score and a follow-up score. This is where you'll find that data, because it's the needs readiness is, you know, going in and getting that baseline and seeing what work needs to be done, and then that follow-up score is the effectiveness score. So in columns L and O, this is where you would find those scores. So you can see I pulled this for this year, so a lot of the sites don't have a follow-up score yet. The reason this one does is because this entry was copied from last year, but this is what you would see ideally. We're still struggling getting follow-up scores from a lot of our ambassadors, but we'll continue to work on it. And hopefully if you see this as usable data, you can also help encourage your ambassadors to get those in at the end of the fiscal year. But the baseline score is what was collected at the beginning of the fiscal year. You could see what tool they used. So if it's a food pantry, we always use the Healthy Food Pantry Assessment Tool. So they'll select that as the assessment tool here in column H. Smarter Lunchroom Scorecard would go in this pot, as well as the retail setting. I can't remember what we call it, but probably assessment tool. So you can see what their baseline score was and then their follow-up score. So if you have these pieces of information, you could report these as these were improvements made to the food environment to improve healthy food access in these settings. So this county here, Millard County, could report an improvement, 3 points of improvement in a score for the food environment at this food pantry. So that's what we always want to see, is just that increased score. And then the other thing that I think it would probably be of the most interest for reporting are the changes adopted. So if we have an improvement of score, we can assume that changes were made to improve the food environment. So you will want to know what those changes were. And you'll just come to this next tab and go in here, and column H that I've highlighted here. They won't be highlighted in yours. I just highlighted them for the sake of this training. You can see the changes that your ambassadors selected for those sites. Hopefully they're selecting more than one per site, but you can see these locations had improved food purchasing or donation specifications. So maybe they did a healthy food drive, so they've requested specific donations for that food pantry. So they selected that change adopted. Increase the space, amount, or variety of healthy options. Decrease the space, amount, variety of unhealthy options. Those obviously often go together. Improve the appeal, layout, or display of snack or competitive foods. So again, these are a drop-down menu, and when they're entering these, we do have in the protocol manual, we have specific PSE entry instructions. So if they're doing a food pantry work, we say if these are the types of projects you're doing at the food pantry, if you're doing a healthy food drive and you're doing the thumbs up, then these are some of the changes you may select as a result of your work. And they go through and they choose the changes that most accurately reflect the work that they did in that food pantry. So when I report statewide, what I'll do is say, I'll report like we had 24 food pantries, 9 food pantries chose increased, or 9 food pantries improved the amount of space, amount, or variety of healthy options available at their pantry. 11 of the 24 pantries improved appeal, layout, or display of foods to encourage healthier selections, and 8 food pantries improved donation specifications. So that's how I like to report PSC, is just where we did the work, the changes that were adopted, and the improvements in the scores from baseline to follow-up, or any combination of that information that you can obtain from your data pool. You can report levels of changes if that's something you're interested in. So policy, systems, and environment work, they can choose a policy change, environmental change, systems change, and those are just tied to the changes they selected. So you can say, through our PSE work, we saw 3 systems changes, 4 environmental changes, and 1 policy change. So the rest of the information in PSE is probably, again, of limited use for your reporting needs. It's here. If you want to get into it deeper, then feel free to reach out to me and I'll walk you through it. If you had any media recognition or coverage, so if there's a newspaper article or a radio spot done on something you did, this is where your ambassadors would report it, or you could report it. And then the individual indicators and individual assessments. Currently, we're not doing any of that. That refers to if we were, reporting changes adopted by the location, as well as like surveys from individuals impacted by that intervention. That would be there. So you don't have to, probably not going to find anything in there, especially for this year at this point. So again, changes, needs readiness, effectiveness, and PSE data is probably those first 3 tabs. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to show you. So you can get estimated reach for your PSE effort. So a couple of things you want to look at are the method of the reach reported. So CC here, this is the total reach. So if they're working in a food pantry, we encourage them to ask the pantry how many people they meet or they reach on a yearly basis, because we're doing one of these entries per year per site. So this person has reported that this pantry reaches 500 people in the year. Again, just like indirect, you really want to just be sure you know the source of the data. So this is the organization's report, so that's a great source of data, but it is estimated. So just being really diligent to be sure you're reporting things accurately as, self-report or the organization report, visual estimation, just so you're reporting things accurately. Is always important, as I'm sure you all know. So those were the things I thought would probably be the most pertinent to your digital measures for this year. Like I said, I will pull impacts for you and get those to you by mid-December. What questions do you have? Clear as mud, huh?
Well, I do have one question. So as a supervisor, should I go in and put the partnerships in, or should I let the ambassadors do all of this stuff?
That's up to you. That's just how you want to run your county. I would definitely check and make sure they've got it all entered in there. It is one that our ambassadors do tend to forget to enter. So I'd say however you want to do that. Yeah,
because last time I looked, they didn't have any partnerships.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot.
And then the nice thing about that module, it's super fast to fill out. So if you decide to go ahead and do that for your county, or at the end of the year you say, oh, 6 of them are missing, you would just go into track or partnerships, add. It's really a pretty short module. So and the meetings and events is like, if you wanted to track, a lot of the things in here are optional. So only things with the red asterisk do you have to report. Other things are, the amount of information you would like at your county level. Any other questions? Okay. All right, well, if I often find these things seem really clear, and then when I get in there, I get kind of lost. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help you with it, and then I'll get that impact data to you as quickly as I can.